I met my best friend, Robert, when I was in third grade and he was in the fourth. That was in the beginning of the 80s. We didn't become friends instantly. Unlike me, he came from a wealthy family and we didn't exactly click. I remember that I used to think of him as spoiled and that it angered me and made me kind of jealous when he bragged about all the amazing traveling he used to do with his family. Because of this, he didn't exactly like me either, and since he was a year older than me and had a lot of more social status, he pretty much turned everyone against me. He used to call me fat brat, even though I wasn't that fat. It didn't bother me much. It wasn't like I was bullied or anything. Mostly, I was left alone. They didn't like me and I didn't like them. I usually ignored it. All this changed when I started 6th grade. When school started that year, Robert didn't show up. There was a there were a lot of rumors going around. Some kids even said he had died, but no one really knew what had happened to him. When he finally returned, 9 months had passed. For some reason, he stepped into my classroom. Although he had always had good grades, it turned out that he was going to retake 6th grade. The teacher didn't really explain why, but said it had something to do with how much he had missed and what had happened to him. He didn't want to go into details about what exactly had happened to him. It was really unprofessional for my teacher to say anything at all when he didn't intend to say everything. It led to a lot of nasty rumors. Robert himself didn't talk about it at all. He was acting reserved, as if he had suddenly become shy. And given the rumors, it wasn't surprising. However, I could tell there was something more going on with him. He looked scared, terrified even, just as if he thought something was out to get him. I have to admit, given the mysterious circumstances, it made me a bit scared as well. When he wasn't one of the cool kids anymore and had to adopt to the new circumstances, he never teased me like he used to. Instead, he was nice to me. At first, I told him to go bother someone else, but after a while, I realized I didn't really have any friends and that perhaps I should give him a second chance. Soon after that, we became friends. He never told me what had happened to him. I asked him once, but it only made him cry. After that, I didn't dare to ask again. During this time, there was a lot of talk on TV about pedophiles and serial killers seemingly hiding in every bush, so I pretty much just assumed that he had been molested or kidnapped. That was the worst thing I could think of, the only thing terrible enough to explain the terror in the eyes of this once confident boy. As time passed, and as we hung out more and more, playing video games down at the arcade, watching all the R-rated movies we could get our hands on, and just enjoying what the 80s had to offer in general, I noticed more and more things about Robert that wasn't right. For one thing, he started to lisp a little bit, and sometimes when he didn't know I could hear him, he talked to himself with an angry voice. He could say stuff like, "Shut the fuck up! Stop hurting me! Leave me alone!" It sounded like he was fighting something within himself, perhaps some imagined monster trying to reach him from within his own mind. Naturally, this freaked me out, but I tried to be brave and understanding and just assume it had something to do with my theory about him being molested or kidnapped. As the year went on, he became my best friend. Over these years, he never mentioned anything about what had happened to him during that summer in the middle of the 80s. But the trauma from it never went away. Instead, it seemed to be getting worse and over time. For example, he developed a pretty severe OCD. He had to jump over every threshold 3 times or more before he could enter certain rooms in his house. Also, he had to turn on and off the light over and over again before he could leave it alone, and sometimes he couldn't eat the food he had ordered or go to the movie we had just bought tickets to. We started the same college, pretty close to our hometown. I picked psychology as my major, partly inspired by Robert's condition. And for reasons I couldn't understand at the time, he chose to major in biology with a personal focus on mycology. When I asked him about it, he avoided the question. But when I pushed a little, he finally opened up. I had no idea that this was the question that was going to reveal everything. What he told me, in a shaky voice, was unbelievable. And yet, it explained so much. Apparently, his personal interest in mycology had to do with what had happened to him during that dire summer of the 5th grade. It bewildered me that he had kept all of this inside for so many years. "Please don't think I'm crazy," he said. "I mean, I know I'm not well. I know that. I'm not well mentally. No, not since that fucking trip, man." When he said those words, I had never seen him so sad and yet so revealed at the same time. We both teared up sitting on the floor in his Spartan, almost sterile dorm. "I was so stoked before we left," Robert said. "My parents were gonna bring me with them on one of their more adventurous trips to the to the Amazons. The fucking Amazons, man. Of course I was stoked. We were supposed to do all kinds of cool things, like canoeing down the Amazon River and hiking through the rainforest. It was going to be just like in the movies." He paused and suddenly sobbed uncontrollably. I put my arm on his shoulder. He collected himself. But it all ended just a few days after we arrived in Brazil. We entered the rainforest together with a group of tourists and some guides. I thought it was pretty lame, you know. I didn't want to be guided around like that. It wasn't what I had imagined. So, shit, I was so fucking stupid. I wandered off the trail, just a little bit. I thought it would give me something cool to talk about at school. But the jungle just swallowed me. I got lost in just under 5 minutes. Suddenly, I couldn't see the group anymore, not even hear them, and he started to cry again. The sky was different somehow, I don't know. "You don't need to continue if you don't want to," I said, although I definitely wanted him to continue talking. I want to tell you, after all this time, standing by my side, you deserve to know. After I got lost, I panicked. I ran in the direction I thought the group had gone and yelled for my parents as loud as I could, but no one heard me. All of a sudden, I found myself standing inside of what looked like a huge crater. It was overgrown with this. "Fuck you! Shut up! Fuck you!" He put his forehead with. He put his forehead. He hit his forehead with his palm as hard as he could. Sorry. This isn't easy. I'm not well, you know that. Anyway, this crater, whatever it was overgrown with this blue, luminescent fucking mold. And there was this spores, man, flying around everywhere. I could feel it in my lungs. It made me drowsy. I walked out of there. I felt like I was walking for hours. And then everything went black, and the next thing I remember, I was lying in a hospital bed back in the States. My parents were at my side, pale and tired, together with a team of doctors. What was it? I mean, what happened? They told me I'd been in a coma for months. Apparently, I had suffered from some kind of unknown tropical yeast infection. It had it had attached itself to my nervous system. They had no cure. All they could do was to observe and pray that my immune system was strong enough to beat it. And it did. At least that was the conclusion when I woke up, seemingly healthy. They couldn't find any traces of the infection anymore. But you don't think it disappeared completely? It didn't! Ever since I woke up in the hospital, I felt it inside me, inside my mind. No one believed me when I told them. They just said it was psychosomatic, a psychological damage from the trauma. But they are wrong. I can feel that thing inside me right in this very now. It is trying to break me down. I think it wants to take over and possess me. But I'm fighting back. I've been fighting back every day for all these years. I didn't believe him, of course, but naturally I didn't say that. He was my best friend and I wanted to show him my support. And what's it like? I asked. What is it doing to you? It isn't like I'm schizophrenic and hear voices or anything. I can feel it. It's forcing horrible thoughts into my mind, grotesque images, depicting people I love. Sometimes there aren't any pictures, just a mysterious awareness of different terrible threats. As I said, I don't hear any voices, but I can feel these threats. If I don't do certain things, it makes it clear to me that something horrible is going to happen to me or someone I love. I don't know how, and it's probably just empty threats to control me, but on an emotional level, I still react to them as if they were real. It's torture, really. It's torturing me. Sometimes I think it wants me to kill myself. But that doesn't make any sense, since it would die with me, right? Was it forcing you to do, Robert? I asked, suddenly not only concerned about him, but the people around him as well. It doesn't want me to kill anyone, if that's what you're worried about. It's small things, really. Like what I should eat, what movies I should see. Sometimes even which girls I should ask out. Although it's never the one I like, so I usually just never approach girls. I really do hate my life. I can't imagine, I said. Yeah, anyway, that's why I'm so interested in mycology. You see, I'm going to figure out a way to cure myself, once and for all. And that's my goal in life. I will never give up. Never. This fucker isn't going to win. I didn't object to anything he said. I just listened and tried to be there for him, as I've always done. From time to time, I did hint he ought to find a psychiatrist, but he didn't listen. He had already decided exactly what to do. We grew even closer as friends after we had had this conversation. But not too long after college, we moved away from each other. I got married to a lovely nurse I met online and moved to San Francisco to work at a psychiatry clinic. Robert moved all the way to Uppsala in Sweden to work as a lead scientist at the Department of Forest Mycology and Plant Pathology. I was actually pretty impressed with this, and every time we talked, he seemed to be doing great. He said that he had developed several mental techniques that helped him keep what he called his infection under the surface of his consciousness. He visited me and my wife a few times as well, and I couldn't really see the terror in his eyes anymore. I really thought he had gotten better. Until last year, when he called me from Sweden. For me, it was in the middle of the night, and told me that he had finally developed a cure for his condition. He didn't sound alright anymore. His voice was frantic. It was almost as if he couldn't contain himself. "My friend," he said, "I've done it. I've just as I said I would. My God, I've finally done it." "What?" I said, half asleep. "Robert, what's going on?" My wife woke up as well, looking at me just as concerned as I was. "I've developed a cure," he said. Okay, a cure? A cure for what? I almost didn't want him to say it. "For my infection." "Listen, this is in the middle. I want you to come here, man. I can't tell anyone here what I have been doing behind their backs at the department, and I need someone to make sure I'm safe when I ingest the cure. I don't think it would be unsafe, but if my heart stops, you need to be ready with a defibrillator." You want me to come to Sweden?" My wife looked shocked. "No," she whispered. "You can't go to Sweden." "Listen, Robert, don't do anything you might regret," I said. "That's why I need you here, but if you can't come, I think I will have to do it by myself. I would have come to you if I could, but I'm afraid they will confiscate my substance at the airport. It really is brilliant what I have done. I will of course pay for your tickets. I will even pay for your wife to come along. You haven't had any vacation in like forever anyway." "Robert, I don't know." "No," my wife whispered. "You do know. Say no." I put my hand over the phone and turned to my wife. "I know this is crazy, but he's saying he will invite us both and pay for everything." "Oh," my wife said, suddenly seeing the silver lining of all of this. A week later, we left for Stockholm. Robert was right. My wife and I hadn't been on a vacation in a very long time, and now that we had got one for free, it seemed foolish not to go. At least, that was how my wife justified it. Personally, I was really worried about my friend, and I truly believed that I was the only one able to help him. Mostly because he's trusted me. I didn't know exactly how I could help him, but I had dealt with psychotic patients in my practice, and I knew how to deal with them. This shouldn't be any different, I convinced myself. We arrived at an airport in Uppsala late at night after an intermediate landing in Stockholm. Robert met us outside. He was standing next to his car under a black umbrella while the rain was pouring down from the dark skies above. He looked excited, and it wasn't only the kind of excitement you get from meeting an old friend. He kind of looked like he was about to be released from prison. I shook his hand. It was wet, not from the rain, but from sweat. "Let me drive you to the hotel I booked for you," he said, and opened the car doors for us. I hesitated a little bit, unsure of how safe it would be for him to drive. However, it was a small town with basically no traffic, so I didn't worry too much. I did insist a bit more forcefully than usual that my wife put on her seatbelt though. Robert got into the car after us. For a minute or two, he didn't do or say anything. The muffled sound of the raindrops hitting the roof of the car was all that was heard. Finally, he spoke. "So, I'm very grateful you came all this way to help me out. I can't express that enough." He slowly drew away from the airport. "I think it's best if we get it over with as fast as possible, and when it's finally over, we can spend the rest of the week together just catching up, okay? How does that sound?" You want to do it now?" I said. He laughed. "No, get a good night's sleep first. You need to be rested for this. You are totally jet lagged now. I can see it on both your faces. but I was thinking we could get started maybe in the morning. He was right. Both my wife and I were tired. I thought it would be better to get some sleep before I tried to talk him out of whatever it was he was planning on to do. In the end, however, I didn't get much sleep. Too many thoughts occupied my mind. I was going through what I planned on saying to him the next day in my head, over and over again. The next morning, however, my plans were immediately ruined. My phone woke me up. It was Robert. His voice was shaking. It sounded like he was having a panic attack, and I couldn't understand anything he was saying to me. "Calm down," I said. "Speak slower. What's going on?" "Okay, just listen. This is how we will do it. I trust you, but I have a feeling you are going to try and talk me out of it. But believe me, there is no other way. It's this or suicide, and no shrink in the world will be able to change my mind. So this is how we will do it. I will be waiting for you and your wife at my apartment." He told me his address. It was nearby. "It will take you about 5 minutes to get here if you run. When I hang up, I will ingest a cure. Most likely, I will be fine when you get there. If not, you have to check my pulse and do whatever you can to wake me up. Do you understand? I don't want the police or anyone else involved, since they would report what I have done at the department. They would put me in prison for that, you know. So if you do that, you will basically ruin my life. It has to be you. You are the only one I trust." "Please don't do this," I said. "Get dressed and get over here, and thank you for everything you've ever done for me." "No, wait!" He ended the call. My wife was awake now as well. We rushed out of bed, got dressed as quick as we could, and ran out of the hotel. On the way to his apartment, I called for an ambulance. It was the most responsible thing to do. After all, his life was worth a lot more to me than his career. In the end, with the right kind of help, he would understand. We stormed into his apartment. He was lying on his bed, unconscious. A bluish liquid on his face had come out of his nose. Next to him, on the floor, there was a glass tube that seemed to have contained a transparent fluid of some sort. I rushed towards him and checked his pulse. I couldn't find it. "Shit, what do I do? What do I do?" I kept saying this until my wife stepped forward and picked up a pair of defibrillator paddles from the table next to the bed. I stepped away from Robert. My wife ripped his shirt open and placed the paddles on his chest and shocked him. Nothing. She did it again. Nothing. Again. "Wait," I said. He's breathing. He's breathing." I pointed at his chest in relief. It was moving up and down. At the same time, the first responders arrived. They took Robert to a hospital nearby. My wife and I followed him there. Robert remained unconscious for about a week. My wife and I stayed at his side. The police interrogated us. I didn't lie to them, but I made sure they understood that whatever crime he committed was because of his psychotic delusions. I also told them about his trauma as a child, about the trip to the Amazon rainforest, and what he had thought he had experienced there. When he finally woke up, I was standing next to him. "Hey," I said, "how are you doing?" He looked at me with tears in his eyes, tears that seemed to be both of tremendous relief and profound sadness. He began to cry. It was an unrestrained, almost childlike crying, and in between the sobs he exclaimed, "Mom, where's Mom?" He cried some more. "I want my mom." "Robert," I said, "it's me, Brat. You're at the hospital, remember? Jesus, we almost lost you. I will call your parents as soon as possible and tell them you're okay." For the first time since he woke up, he focused on me. "He's gone," Robert said. now smiling, although he kept on crying. He didn't suffer from his lisp anymore. My God, I'm finally free! These words made me smile as well. I didn't really think he had cured himself of anything, but rather that whatever he did had worked as a powerful placebo on him. Perhaps, in a way, he had actually succeeded to free himself from his inner demons. But then, just as I touched his shoulder to comfort him, he turned away from me and mumbled something that made my skin crawl. In the same childlike manner as he had been crying, he whispered, "Don't fucking touch me, fat brat!" I stepped away from his bed with a pale face. My wife looked at me, confused. "What's happening, baby?" I don't believe it. I don't believe it, I repeated over and over as Robert looked at me with the exact same contempt as in 3rd grade, all those years ago. In the end, he was sent to our hometown where his mother had to take care of him. That day at the hospital was when I lost my best friend. Since then, I have thought a lot about the blue mold deep inside the Amazon jungle and the mysterious blue liquid under his nose all those years later. Could he have been right about all of this, except for that one crucial detail?